Well, folks, it's official. Hollywood's big summer comeback in 2025 was about as successful as Disney's attempt to make us care about a Blue Alien Lilo and Stitch remake. Oh, wait, scratch that. That thing made $1 billion. Meanwhile, everything else? Straight to the cinematic morgue. Grab your popcorn. Don't worry, theaters have plenty left because nobody showed up. And let's break down how the so-called Summer of Redemption turned into the Summer of Nope. Remember when Hollywood Suits used to say survive till 25? Yeah, about that. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Critical Nerd, and to all my returning viewers, a humble thank you for sticking with me through another Hollywood disaster deep dive. And if you're new here, you picked a great time to join and watch, because we're about to dissect Hollywood's latest masterclass in hubris, and trust me, you don't want to miss this train wreck. Before we dive in, though, do me a really huge favor. If you enjoy watching me roast Hollywood's bad decisions, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an episode of How'd They Screw This Up? And hey, if you know someone who loves watching corporate America fail spectacularly, share this video with them. I'm sure they'll thank you. So, summer of 2025, the season that was supposed to save cinema, the year Hollywood finally bounced back. The magical time when Superman, dinosaurs, and the Fantastic Four would soar to box office glory and restore the natural order. How'd that work out for you, Hollywood? Today we're breaking down the numbers, the failures, and the sheer unadulterated delusion that led to one of the most embarrassing summers in recent memory. We'll talk about how James Gunn's Superman, or as some would say, Superman's James Gunn, couldn't leap tall box office expectations, how the Fantastic Four proved they're still not fantastic, and how a 50-year-old shark movie managed to outswim the brand new studio competition. Let's rewind to the beginning of 2025. The industry was buzzing. After years of chanting survive till 25, this was the year. The recovery year. The year cinemas would be packed and studios would be swimming in cash like Scrooge McDuck. The lineup looked impressive on paper. James Gunn's Superman reboot, Marvel's Fantastic Four First Steps, Jurassic World Rebirth, Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning, Disney's live-action Lilo and Stitch. The goal, it was simple. Match or beat 2023's $4.09 billion summer haul. Analysts were salivating. Theater owners were ordering champagne. Studios execs were picking out the color on their new yachts. Spoiler alert, those yachts are about to be repossessed. The summer started strong, and I'll give them credit where credit is due. Memorial Day weekend was a record breaker, with Lilo and Stitch pulling in $182 million. And Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, well, it's opening to a franchise best $79 million. For a brief shining moment, it looked like they might just pull it off. Domestic revenue was up 25% year over year. And then June 13th happened. From that point forward, the box office went on a 6-weekend losing streak. 6 weekends of watching that early 25% advantage evaporate like morning dew in Death Valley. By Labor Day, the great summer of 2025 had managed to barely tie 2024's disappointing $3.67 billion haul. And I mean barely, a $7 million difference. That's not a rounding error, folks. That's a statistical tie where both fighters knocked themselves out. Now let's talk about the big blue disappointment himself. Superman's James Gunn, supposed masterpiece. With a production budget of $225 million and a marketing budget somewhere around $150 million, some would say $200 million, this movie needed to make north of $700 million worldwide just to break even. Final tally, around $610 million globally. Let me put that in perspective. Man of Steel, back in 2013, made $670 million. 12 years ago. Adjusted for inflation, that $670 million is worth nearly $900 million in today's money. Gunn's Superman didn't even come close to the original's real value. And here's where it gets really embarrassing. Man of Steel made 57% of its money from international markets. You know what percentage of Superman 2025's gross came from international? A pathetic 43%. That's not a decline, folks. That's a cliff dive. The China situation, it's brutal. Superman managed a whopping $8.5 million there. Total. For comparison, Jurassic World Rebirth made $80 million over in China. Even Gunn himself had to admit that anti-American sentiment was hurting the film overseas. Gee, I wonder why a character whose motto was truth, justice, the American way might face some resistance in foreign markets right now. It's almost like global geopolitics are a thing. The domestic performance wasn't really that much better. With a 53% second weekend drop, for a character who's supposed to be timeless, watching him get outpaced by dinosaurs and lose screens to a 50-year-old shark movie is like watching your childhood hero get stuffed into a locker. Nothing says cultural phenomenon like losing your IMAX theaters to another bomb. Now, we can't leave Marvel out of this. We need to talk about Fantastic Four first steps, or as I like to call it, first steps toward financial ruin. Marvel's first family returned to the big screen with all the fanfare of a wet firecracker. After years of development hell and promises that this time it would be different, Disney finally gave us their take on Reed Richards and Company. The result? A $472.6 million take worldwide. Now, for context, that's less than Ant-Man made in 2015. Ant-Man, a character nobody had heard of before the MCU made him famous, somehow managed to outperform the Fantastic Four by nearly $50 million. And that was almost a decade ago. The domestic drop-off was particularly brutal, a 67% decline from the first to second weekend. That's not a sophomore slump. That's a sophomore faceplant into concrete. Even the Hollywood Reporter, yes, that Hollywood Reporter, which usually tries to find the silver lining in everything, admitted that the Marvel movie quickly lost its groove. What makes this even more painful is that this was supposed to be Marvel's redemption story. After years of Phase 4 and Phase 5 disappointments, the Fantastic Four was going to remind everyone why Marvel was the king of superhero cinema. Instead, they reminded everyone that maybe the reason these characters have struggled on screen for decades isn't because previous filmmakers didn't get it. Maybe it's because they're just not that compelling to modern audiences. The international performance was particularly damning. In an era where Marvel movies used to make 60 to 70% of their money overseas, the Fantastic Four couldn't even crack 50%. That's not a global phenomenon. That's a regional curiosity. Now, in the spirit of fairness, let's talk about the one semi-success story of the summer, Jurassic World Rebirth. I say semi because while it made money, it still represents the decline of what used to be a bulletproof franchise. Rebirth pulled in $887 million worldwide, which sounds impressive until you remember that Jurassic World made $1.6 billion and Fallen Kingdom made $1.3 billion. This latest entry couldn't even crack $900 million, making it the lowest grossing film in the modern Jurassic series. Think about that for a second. In a summer where Superman flopped and the Fantastic Four face planted, the relative winner was a movie about dinosaurs eating people that still underperformed compared to its predecessors. It's like winning a participation trophy in a race where everyone else tripped and fell. But here's the thing that really gets me. Jurassic World Rebirth isn't even a good movie. Critics and audiences alike were pretty lukewarm on it. Yet it still managed to outperform superhero properties with decades of brand recognition and billions in previous box office success. Now, what does that tell us? Maybe people are just tired of superheroes and spandex, but they'll never get tired of watching people get eaten by prehistoric predators. There's probably a metaphor there about Hollywood executives and their audiences. But I'll let you draw your own conclusions. The China performance was particularly telling. $80 million, which absolutely demolished Superman's pathetic $8.5 million. Apparently, dinosaurs translate better than American superhero symbols. I mean, who knew? But it wasn't just the big tentpoles that failed. Oh no, this was a systemic collapse. Disney had a particularly brutal summer beyond its superhero failures. And here's where it gets really interesting. They've openly admitted they've lost Gen Z male audiences. And their solution? Not better storytelling. Not characters people actually care about. No, just more reboots, more gimmicks, and focus groups led by people who think Fortnite dances are a personality. Disney right now is like that awkward kid in high school trying to sit at the cool table. You know, hey guys, we've got Smurfs, a female Jedi, and what about another Frozen spinoff? Meanwhile, Gen Z dudes are like, nah, we're watching UFC, streaming anime, and playing Elden Ring again. The Rihanna-led Smurfs movie barely scraped past $109 million worldwide. Pixar's Elio, from the studio that once printed money, flopped harder than a fish on dry land. And here's the kicker. The fact that Lilo and Stitch outgrossed everything else tells you all you need to know. Disney didn't win because they're creative. They won because nostalgia was the only thing Gen Z boys and their parents could agree on. Everything else, straight to the bargain bin. I mean, Ballerina, $133 million flop. Mickey 17, $133 million disaster. The Karate Kid reboot, $110 million and a swift kick to the studio's financial gut. Even Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, despite that strong opening, finished at $594 million worldwide. For comparison, Fallout made $824 million. That's a $230 million drop. Tom Cruise literally risked his life for this movie, and audiences shrugged. My favorite statistic here? Hollywood undershot even their lowered expectations, landing at $3.53 billion instead of the hoped for $4 billion, falling short of that 2023 by nearly $500 million. There was no Barbenheimer moment, just expensive movies that audiences politely ignored, while the international market continued to abandon Hollywood content for their own. And then there's the ultimate insult, the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday. The moment that perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with Hollywood's approach to content creation. During Labor Day weekend, Universal's 50th anniversary re-release of Jaws, a movie that came out when Gerald Ford was president, outperformed two brand new studio releases domestically. Jaws, a movie about a shark, made in 1975, beat brand new movies with modern special effects, A-list stars, and marketing budgets larger than the GDP of small countries. This isn't just embarrassing. It's a referendum on the entire modern studio system. When your audiences would rather watch a half-century-old movie about a mechanical shark than your brand new tentpole productions, maybe the problem isn't the audience. Maybe the problem is that you've forgotten how to tell stories people actually want to see. Steven Spielberg made Jaws for $9 million back in 1975. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $50 million today. Compare that to Superman's $225 million budget, or Fantastic Four's $200+ million budget. Spielberg created a cultural phenomenon and invented the modern blockbuster for a fraction of what these studios spent to create. Well, expensive disappointments. The symbolism here is almost too perfect. The movie that created the concept of the summer blockbuster ended up being the summer's most reliable draw. It's like cinematic poetry. If poetry could lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, in the interest of balanced reporting, there were a few bright spots. Warner Brothers had a relatively successful year thanks largely to horror movies like Weapons, which managed to grab $10.2 million over Labor Day weekend to cap off their surprisingly successful run. Low budget horror continues to be one of the few reliable genres because it doesn't require massive budgets or international appeal to turn a profit. Lilo and Stitch, despite being a remake, did manage to cross $1 billion worldwide, becoming the only 2025 title to hit that milestone by summer's end. For comparison, 2023 had multiple billion-dollar movies by this point, including Barbie and Oppenheimer. It's almost poetic that the most successful movie of the summer was a remake of a Disney animated film from 2002. The lesson? Rehash old cartoons, or else you're boxed out of the $1 billion club. Original ideas? Cute. But unless they feature a blue alien with multiple arms, good luck making rent. Apple's F1, the movie, also performed reasonably well, soaring to $604 million global. And this was in theaters, not streaming. Meanwhile, we had some genuinely weird success stories like K-pop Demon Hunters, which started on Netflix and somehow translated into a $20 million theatrical sing-along release. Streaming to theaters, like a Cinderella story for the digital age, except Cinderella was Korean and knew martial arts. But even these successes come with asterisks. Lilo and Stitch succeeded largely because it played well internationally and appeals to families. Two demographics that superhero movies are increasingly struggling to capture. F1 worked because it had actual stars and real spectacle, not CGI spectacle. The lesson seems clear. Audiences still want to go to movies, but they want movies that offer something they can't get at home. Pure spectacle isn't enough anymore if that spectacle feels manufactured or soulless. So what does all this mean? Well, buckle up, because I think we're witnessing a fundamental shift in how Hollywood does business, and it's going to be painful for everyone involved. First, the international market that Hollywood has relied on for the past decade is clearly souring on American content. Whether it's geopolitical tensions, cultural differences, or just audience fatigue, the days of depending on overseas grosses to bail out domestic disappointments are over. Studios are going to have to start making movies that work primarily for American audiences again. Second, the superhero bubble, it's officially burst. Well, not completely. Superman did manage to cross 600 million worldwide and exceeded 300 million domestically, proving there's still life in the genre. But the days when any character in spandex could automatically generate massive profits, those are done. Audiences are pickier now, and they can smell corporate boardroom decision-making from a mile away. Third, budgets are going to have to come down, and Hollywood's much-touted comeback is looking more like fantasy than fact. Analysts are warning about tariffs, production slowdowns, and diminished production volume creating real economic headaches. Box office growth has been underwhelming at best. Turns out making movies isn't just about hiring pretty people and rolling cameras. Who knew economics and global trade policies could sabotage the sequel cycle? The streaming revolution taught audiences that there's plenty of great content available at home for $15 a month. If you want to spend $50 taking their family to the theater, you better give them something truly special. A mediocre superhero movie with great special effects isn't going to cut it anymore. The success of movies like Jaws during this disaster summer proves that a good storytelling still matters more than anything else. Audiences show up for quality, but they'll increasingly ignore expensive mediocrity, no matter how many explosions you throw at them. So there you have it, folks. The summer of 25, a masterclass in hubris, a cautionary tale about chasing trends instead of telling stories, and a nearly $500 million lesson in not counting your chickens before they hatch. Hollywood spent years saying survive till 25, and when 2025 finally arrived, they didn't thrive. They tripped at the finish line. The industry is at a crossroads. They can learn from these failures, or they can double down on the same strategies and continue hemorrhaging money while wondering why audiences left. The real kicker? We got proof audiences still want good entertainment. They'll show up for a 50-year-old shark movie. They'll embrace Korean martial arts musicals. But they're increasingly saying no to expensive mediocrity. My money, it's on them learning nothing. But hey, maybe I'll be surprised. What do you think? Are we witnessing the death of the modern blockbuster or just a temporary setback? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to The Critical Nerd for more content like this, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of future episodes of How Hollywood Continues to Shoot Itself in the Foot. Until next time, keep questioning the narrative. I'm The Critical Nerd. Out.